And we are live. Welcome back, everybody. We are doing two shows today on this channel. Lots of information to break down, bringing back the great Michael Tsarion, unslaved.com, to do some updates for you about the worldwide chaos, the mass hysteria, and also a note regarding our last interview talking about conspiracy research, where we took on Professor David Black and many of the other detractors of this field of information. And so, Michael, welcome back. You wanted to come on and share some updates. So glad to have you here, man.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. You're quite right. We got some feedback emails, from the podcast. And again, I have to clarify that fact about physically sitting down with such people. I would sit down with them, right? But when you make polemical remarks, some people sometimes get a bit confused, and my main policy in life is not to sit down. So just again, to clarify that, I don't bother. There's too many other important things to get along with. But when you do a podcast and you're speaking, hypothetically often and also polemically, that doesn't mean that every word one says then needs to be, sort of brought to court as if you've made some statement or disclosure in any way. It's rhetorical. Right? The people listening will rhetorically sit down with him and other people like him. The main point that I'm always making in everything, and it probably needs to be clarified, is that the information that we deal with allows you to sit down, even to get to that point, to knock them out as being authorities. That's what really the gist of what I said before is that if you take seriously this, information we present, you will be then in a position. Now, hopefully you don't just take it and cut and paste it. You go and check up and follow it and make it your own. And I know a lot of the people that listen to us definitely do that and even add more than what we know. This is what, needs to be said. Take what we're saying, go study it, and then add your own thought. And then I really do believe you do have a toolkit. So it is quite right then to say, more than rhetorically, that you could talk to your professors at the front of the class. You can take on anybody. Don't be put off by their eminence, because we're offering you the names of people infinitely more eminent. We already did it. So, the proof is in the bag that we can do that. There's extremely high level, high placed people like the Rupert Sheldrake's and so on, who have long since gone deeper than these lunatic academics. You and I just spoke on the last podcast about the lie, of the paleontological and anthropological demarcations of, Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age nonsense, which quietly has been lifted and thrown into the dumpster, and yet stop for 200 years. That was literally drilled by rote into everyone who wanted to get a degree, let alone interest. It's in all the encyclopedias. It's all in the dictionaries of anthropology. It's taught for years in school. It didn't amount to a hill of beans. But where did you ever hear it loudly said outside the faculty that that's now null and void? More than that, the demarcations they've replaced those with will be null and void in 15 years, right? So if you go to that little link, this little poster got me thinking of today. And you pass by it really quickly. It's been up, for years. It comes and goes. And here it is, hey, the moment you realize, that the conspiracy nut was telling the truth. And it's kind of a little internet meme, that you flutter by. But no, stop for a moment, and I just wanted to discuss this for just a few minutes. That says a lot. That is the look of the mass of the world. When they have to face it, your G. Edward Griffins, right? And hundreds of names I could mention were right. And that many people, that doesn't mean everybody in this community, right? There's a lot of boogaloo people in this community. Always have to say that. But we've gone at length at that in other programs. But in general, the work that people have done, like ourselves, right, to expose the deep truths, to not be satisfied with terms of deep state. Well, that means hardly anything. What does that mean? And in fact, in the brain of an anarchist or these types running the streets today, that means big government, which is wrong. You see, but it can be easily misinterpreted. You have to draw out the footnote. World communism, right? We've moved a step. Let's go further, right? CFR, Roundtable, right? British intelligence, right? We've done that. We've moved to show you in greater detail. You just had a guest on today who's showing you the perfidy of the royals, right? What was his name? Altwood,
Sean
that
Atwood,
you just talked with. But Sean would agree with us that trying to prosecute, trying to prosecute anyone from that royal family is now impossible because they have a sovereignty undreamed of, right? And the chances, we're in weird times, so I wouldn't say it's impossible, but in the general thrust of history, it is, because they've got crown protection, which is a specific kind of protection. I've had it on my work, on my blogs, for decades, showing that these crown corporations have a kind of sovereignty that is, the real meaning of the word. If they didn't have it, they'd have long ago been dragged into, the city square and stoned, right? So there's that. And it's people like ourselves who've spoken like that. But just to keep it very simple, according to the poster you just showed, let's make a milestone, let's make a marker right now of a moment in which we have won. Right? Just break one glass of champagne, right, even cheap champagne, but at least raise the bloody thing and say, from now on, you motherfuckers out there, right? No, you've lost. What are you going to do now? Remember on our first broadcast on the conspiracy naysayers, and then the second one with this Professor Black? I don't think they'll pick up their phones now if any of us and anyone listening actually went and tried to engage them now, even though what they wrote was only last year. Let's try it. Phone them up now and say, yeah, we want to engage you, with this idea that you had last year of naysaying conspiracy. How do you feel now? And of course, they'll have something to say. Well, record it, because it's bull crap. It always has been bull crap, right? But now it's official. Now it is official. And of course, behind that comes even more of a deeper critique of journalism in general, those types in general, just because they get the protection of an institution, just because they can wave a degree around fooling people. That degree means nothing to me, right? All that means is that you have been cut down to size by the twogs above you, who came first, making sure that you will never get your credential unless this, and this, and this, and this is happening. The academic system is a obstacle course that will phase out any alpha people, right? Only betas and cetas are going to get in. And even they will have to have, kiss the right asses, belong to the right clubs, and all the rest of it. Now, I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. So, one way I've done to trumpet is to always bring forth, higher intellects from history who are more credible, and also unpack their work so that I can prove it. Historians of all kinds, right? And we have great people today, like the guy you had on. He doesn't hold a degree, right? And so many others. And the great masters of conspiracy often didn't either. Some did, some didn't. But when you can bring to bear, remember that list I sent you of all the of the people who are in the most eminent positions imaginable, Carol Quigley's and all of that. You don't need more than that. But you will need to know it yourself, because these naysayers will never bring up those names. And they didn't. He said he didn't even want to deal with individual conspiracies or conspirators, theorists. He didn't want to. Yeah, of course you don't. Right? That's screaming from behind mother's skirts is what that is. And they will never engage you now. In the preponderance of the evidence that anyone listening to us can bring to court now, the preponderance of it. You don't even have to be into conspiracy yourself in a hard way, but obviously now. So basically the way they put the argument is that all you guys are stretching it. That JFK stuff, that's stretching it, mate. Chemtrails, ozone layer, world government, right? Jewish conspiracy. You're stretching it. You're stretching it. You're stretching it. You just turn it right back on them. Go, you're stretching it. Because how could you look at the headlines today, right now as we speak, and tell us that we are stretching anything? It's the people on CNN who are doing the stretching. It's Mitt Romney walking with the Black Lives Matter. It's all the bull crap. It's the people with the Black Lives Matter agenda. One of the most privileged people in the West. Tucker Carlson said that millions are coming a year to get into our country because we're not racist. That's the fact, right? So where is that not stretching? And then when you used to put conspiracy theories on the table, and maybe even still today, they are stretching their narrative to deny it. And I felt this was important enough to come on to talk about, because they have always traditionally blamed us for stretching it. I would believe you, but this is just stretching it. Can that accusation, I'm asking people, be sustained today? Or is it their narrowness? Right, the condition of trauma is monodeism, right? You shrink the reality in order you can handle it. I can't function in that, but I can function in this, barely, right? and everyone has it's also collectivized. It's a collectivized issue as well. It's not just a PTSD on the individual level. It's a social hysteria. It's mass contagion. What you have now is called the dancing plague. Look up the word. Go to an encyclopedia online and type in dancing plague 1540 or whatever the hell it is. Mass hysteria, social contagion, right? It's as old as time itself. And we've unpacked it in so much detail on Enslaved and other places, right? And again, a lot of people don't need to know it. And if you do that homework, as I said, then you come back and you tell me we're stretching it. When you take non-issues, right? When leading politicians are dressing up in non-entity civilization clothes, right? When all of their policies, and of course, this then takes you, we're stretching it again, David. We're going to stretch it again. If we tell these people to wonder why always when a Democratic, to speak in their language, since everybody's obsessed with party politics, right? Well, then go and study the history of the Democratic Party. There's some more stretching it. That Wilson, Roosevelt, Truman, Kennedy, just start with those four and see the damage that was done. Atom bombs have been dropped by these people. The most anti-human, inhuman, anti-American policies have been done under just the four I mentioned and their British agent controllers. Go and study where does the Democratic Party come from? Why is it so infused with socialism and communism now? It's because it always was. It was a branch of the great, Red International that inflamed the world. And its headquarters are in London, but it finally, through the groups I just mentioned, the Council on Foreign Relations, right, and your group, the round table groups, it got its agents in. Very wealthy people, some of them, but one way or the other, without going into the old biographies of every one of those men, they got those agents in. So what you see running in the streets today at the behest of the Democratic Party and what they're doing when they dress up in these costume dramas and all the rest is nothing new. Nothing is new. Not the graffiti, not the defacement, not the anti-Americanism, not the pulling down of statues, not their idiotic policies, not their Trump derangement syndromes. None of this is new. To millennials, it is. But this has been a long process that started, before Wilson and right back, with FDR and probably even before that. But, those are the main ones. Find out the history of that party, how it's been behind some of the most foul deeds politically in terms of America and the world. And then go and find out more. And it doesn't exonerate the Republican Party, right? But you have to start somewhere, right? So studying that, then you get to your Colonel Mandel Houses, you see, and you get to your, Felix Frankfurters and your Bernard Baruchs and your Winston Churchills, and you start tracing it back to some very powerful orgs like the Royal Society, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, Chatham House, right? The Round Table groups. There's a story then will unfold about the real government. This has a lot to do with the Jesuit presence. So how are we stretching it with any of this? We have proved beyond reasonable doubt. Find out how the Democratic Party could only exist as it is now and always has been, but especially now with the idiot vote, right? Just discover that. And you'll now wonder why they cater and get on their knees, to the people that they are. Because they can't survive as a party without it. And Trump has lit the fuse that, their exit strategy now had to be pulled out of the drawer. The bottom red file, oh shit, we're in the shit. Right? And what you're seeing is a kind of an exit strategy. You're seeing the final thrashing about of a narrative that has long since been dead ideologically, but it's taken a bit of time, in the American context, in the field, so to speak, to finally fizzle and die, right? But everyone who knew when this thing reaches its DEFCON situation, it will do it thrashing around. It will try to tear down just like a Klingon on the boot of Captain Kirk. It will try to go down and take you with it. So, we have to do these little small podcasts and refreshers for people to realize in the bigger context. We did a very in-depth one there on Sunday, on Enslaved, going to the deepest realm possible about the very motivations of consciousness, how this comes about. We don't want to do that here. But again, it's important to always pull back from the canvas of the happenings and see it. And also see that the people we're talking about are pretty much irredeemable. We start off talking here about people who are, maybe going to give us a little bit of credit. That's obviously wishful thinking. They're not, right? They're not going to credit us. They never will. In fact, when they're confronted with the facts, which we have just mentioned, their mind's locked down. And instead of progressing and giving you your due and saying, well, something, I give ground. No, they are not going to do that. That's not even possible psychologically. What there is possible psychologically is to recoil even further backwards into further regression. We offer progress, right? That's why, we said on the other program, everything we would critique of a society, right, is, and you brought the point up, everything we would critique of a civilization is only to improve that civilization, not continue to tear it down. But a certain amount of critique is necessary in the analysis, you understand? But they want to pull it down and poison it. We want to cut it to rot and hope that it will grow again, right? That the limb will grow again. Same way, the opposite is true of these people. You could put leaflets through their door, you could strap them down, right? And literally, make it obvious from an evidential point of view that we are right and they are wrong. And they will never give ground. What happens is they go back into a more primitive political, socio-political state so that they can continue blaming you, continue envying you, continue with their ad hominem attacks. Who are you? You're a shill, you're a Rosicrucian, you're a Satanist, you're a devil worshipper. Where's your credentials from the authorities that matter so much to me and that I'm poisoned, glutted? They've glutted me. They've poisoned my whole structure. Every cell is pus-ridden from the system. But where's your credentials? I'm not going to believe you until you show me them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. And you were talking even about looking at this from the angle of, okay, yeah, we can talk about the Democratic Party, the history of the fact that they were the ones that supported the entire slavery thing in the beginning and the Jim Crow laws back in the day, and that there was a whole difference happening in America when it came to African people and Black people that history doesn't talk about. You got to go read Thomas Sowell and other people to understand that. I actually just posted a 2.5-hour reading from his book about the history of slavery. It's one of the most in-depth analysis that I've ever read. And then when it comes to even the Republican Party in America, you've got the John McCains, you got the Bushes, you got all these people. It's not about party, but they insinuate their agents into it, going into the intelligence establishments, getting into the Fabian networks, the Communist International, as you said. You got to zoom back. The media has pulled us all into this very superficial understanding of how this all works. All we've done, and all people like you did, Michael, and which inspired me to get into it and do it, was to really zoom out and get big picture and say, hey, there's this architecture of control in place. One of the presentations, actually, that I believe you covered the entire royal establishment and the whole thing, was Age of Manipulation. That's actually the first time you were wearing the Unslaved logo as well, which inspired the podcast, which people can check that whole presentation out on unslaved.com. But that you got into all that and you did that. And then we've had people like Ted Gunderson and the list of people that we brought up last time, Anthony Sutton, Professor Kerry Bolton, Professor Carol Quigley, Senator Gary Allen, Nicholas Hager, G. Edward Griffin, James H. Billington, Lieutenant James Bogreitz, and so many others. It's all been put out there, and it's now absolutely irrefutable. And it's not only irrefutable if you were to just debate it on facts and all that, it's being shown to the world right now. I mean, for crying out loud, CNN just released an article yesterday saying that 1,000 experts agree, medical experts agree, that it's okay for you to go and protest in the streets because we have to help support the health of our society as well as mitigating this coronavirus. So you can go out and protest, but that we're not saying that you can now go open up your businesses now and you can go and gather and play some football and you can have kids actually passing a ball back and forth. We can't do that, but you can go out and spray paint the streets and blow things up and scream at each other in the thousands. That's okay. So right now I'm sitting there going, they're in checkmate. They put themselves in checkmate. And do you think that's what it is, Michael? Is it psychological? Is it the fact that it's imploding so much and there's been this level of arrogance and narcissism in these people that to the level that now there's nowhere else to go but just, we're going to just give you completely obvious lies now to explain everything away and you'll still believe it. Like, are they insane?
Yes, they are. They're insane. See, it's the equivalent of the village idiot. Earlier when we said they need the idiot vote, it's because they're idiots now. Once upon a time, in the days of old, they could get away with actually having read some books and know something about, I don't know, liberalism or whatever, right? Although if you go back to the Robert Owens and the Godwins, and anyone who espoused liberalism even back then, there were a few, it wasn't, there was a lot of missing in the deck, even then, right? Even if you go back to the Leons and all of these other people who espoused it originally, right? And also, a lot of them realized at the time that what they were espousing would lead in riots. See, again, people think that what they're seeing now is original. Back in 1890, the thing called the French Revolution, well, that was only one incendiary manifestation of socialism in the streets. It was horrific. Millions upon millions upon millions of people died in France alone. I've got the facts on it from actual records at the time. That obviously the American people know nothing about. We'll be getting to that kind of content down the line. But that was only one city, right? Other nations like Prussia and others and Austria were rocked by this, nearly completely disappeared as civilizations, okay, because of this incendiary activity of exactly the same kind of people. So even early socialists realized how quickly their message, their ideology turns into this, right? Turns into mayhem. But the real answer to your question is that now you cannot talk about any educational stuff, right? All you talk about is an idiot narrative. So imagine I actually had this happen to me where a village idiot came over one time. I recently moved into the area, and the next thing I know, I'm sitting at a coffee shop, and the village idiot opens the door and comes in and starts talking to me. And he had this thing like a guided tour of the area. I mean, weird shit, right? Like I can't walk around the area, or I haven't done it already. He's gonna take all of us and march us around and give us some sort of narrative on it, like he's some official, right? But he's obviously boogaloo, right? And so you get the village idiot. So the people that you see, these Pelosi's and other people, are now the village idiot. Anybody conversing on them on any level of history, especially the names you just mentioned, people of eminence and knowledge, and they exist today. I'm endlessly putting up their, information. Look at even a Kevin McDonald we're having on next week.
Right.
Any of those people get easily. So why do they have to come down and like bushfires to get you fired from your job, to get you banned from a particular social media platform? That's the bully boy tactics. That's Ayn Rand's Attila the Hun working with the witch doctor. The witch doctor is the village idiot who does some juju, hoping he can hypnotize you with a bunch of socialism and, help the poor and all of this nonsense. It's basically anti-consumeristic, right? And it's all generated out of, the Red Central. International, which has been operating with this type of propaganda from the time of Lenin onwards. So it's a couple of mixes together, but by now people should know the lettuce. They should know, the mix of the salad. They should know what the coleslaw is made of, right? A couple of elements, and so you throw into the mix that these people don't really know anything, and they're very afraid now that the other narrative is strong. Their narrative has become so weak. And you've got to understand that a lot of what they're doing when they unleash the nihilists like this is because underneath it, they're packing to leave. They're not sticking around. Trump lit the fuse on that. They know that he's getting voted for, and everything that they do further even gets liberal people. The same with Brexit in England. I mean, they've had it. They've had the evidence that every time you move, the sane tax-paying people change. And taxpayers make the law. There's not going to be any defunding of the police. And if they try it, it won't work. And if they try half the other stuff that they're trying, it won't work either, because the taxpayer doesn't want that. Yeah, a few Hollywood crankos want it, but no sane person, right? The rate of living in gated communities has risen in the last 10 or 20 years. That's a form of policing, isn't it? People don't want to be on the streets because they're lethally afraid of what will happen.
All the real facts. Just started to jump in there, but the people calling for defunding the police all live in gated communities with armed security forces.
Well, some.
And they're the ones who are also calling for open borders too. It's hilarious.
You get boogaloo people like that as well, but I don't even include them, right? Well, here's another thing, just in case people think there is some sanity behind doing that. If you were to defund the police in some of the major cities and hand it over to the people that they're saying will hand it over, aren't you spreading those other social workers too thin? Even if I gave them billions, aren't they now going to be crap at their first job if they have to double up as being the Lone Ranger as well?
Right.
Who works out this stuff? And then secondly, and more importantly, if you do demilitarize, government, or say you even, defund the police in any way, all you're asking for then is vigilante action. It's the Charles Bronson vigilante action that will now replace it, where people will defend their own communities with guns. Right? Let's not get into the morality of whether that's good or bad. Just keep it as a straight fact. If the police don't exist, history has already showed you what will happen. That if these Antifa people try to go into middle-class neighborhoods, they'll be slaughtered by very well-trained people like what do you call those guys? The guardians or whatever their name was.
Well, there's all
They used
kinds
to
of
protect
gangs
trains.
out there. Yeah, there's all kinds of
Yeah.
militias out there. There's ex-military
Yes,
running
yes.
around, ex-cops, paramilitaries.
That's right. Yeah. So you need the police for more than just the reasons that these histrionic nutballs are telling you to get rid of it. They don't think of the other factors that it'll move down. There's grades of this. And the police are just one grade. And if you take that away, you bring something else to bear. What they're imagining. And so to answer your question, don't you see what magical child thought must be predominant then? Just defund the police, everything be paradise. Who's even taking a 101 sociology class that could possibly believe that? So the sump has erupted. We will unleash, right, the anarchists and the nihilists. It's exactly as conspiracy people said. If you've ever heard that Albert Pike quote, and millions more I could mention, you heard it from a conspiracy guy. So bring back that little clip that you showed, and just don't flip past this in the next couple of months again when you see this. This is very important. This is one of the great memes of our time, folks. So it's not big-headed. It's not boasting. It's just owning our ground. We've taken it on the nose for 20 years or more, and people before me took it very heavily as well before the internet age. So it's our perfect right to raise the flag and say, hey, we win the day. You are the ones stretching it. You are the ones left without a narrative. Right? Now, it doesn't mean that there are no conservative parties. They've made sure of that. But whatever conservative narrative there is, it needs also renovation. So this is not a bashing, right, podcast. This is not just more bashing of our enemy, just like you see pretty much on the mainstream media. We are definitely saying that the conservative narrative in life in general, before Redism or any of this incendiary stuff happened in the 17th and 18th century, we do need to go back to roots. And we have great help from people like Ayn Rand and others, and her institute and others, and the Mises Institute and others, right? So, but we need our work to do our work as well, to renovate it of all of this nonsense, and colorings and complexions. And that's our work, right? So don't get us wrong. We know that the real legitimate paleo-conservatism needs to be renovated because the other international that we're talking about did infiltrate it. And they were very good at infiltrating, and that's an old story we can't get into now. And it brings you to this story of secret societies, because many of these societies that we're talking about, like CFR, are actually secret societies. These blacks don't accept that. They, by their own definition, just because they put out a quarterly or yearly magazine, right? Just because other insiders found out what the list was of the members of it. Those were all people who were patriots that found that. They did not release it, right? They've never espoused it. They've kept it as secret as they could, and not just that group, but many others that we could mention, right? It's only because of excellent journalism of the real kind, you see, that finally blew the whistle, and then they said, okay. But when they even publish a list of names, David Rockefeller at the top and all these other people down below, even those names that the Foreign Affairs, which is the magazine for the CFR, print, and there's other documents that might release some of their members, those are only the shills that the media gets to know. Who are the ones behind them? The real power families. Yeah, exactly. Many of them are actually royal, by the way. Those are not for sale. They're not going to put posted. So it's only conspiracy people, great men, I can list endlessly, right, that have made that available. So yeah, let's raise the flag, drink a glass of hopefully really good champagne and wine and celebrate that, and make a mark. Let's this podcast be, a moment in time in which we say, yeah, there's nobody rational in society today. I don't care what school they come from, who they've been. The movement has been around even on the internet almost since the beginning. I was there before Google even, right? Came online with a Google video and all. And if you take it way back to the 90s, a Desert Storm, and even before that with the Reagan era, and Operation Paperclip and all these things, all the way back, you must celebrate those names. You must legitimize the conspiracy. I don't lose anything if you don't. But I'm as a spokesman for that movement, I have the perfect right to come out and say, yeah, we won the day. We won the silverware here. We have the trophy on our mantelpiece, and nothing can take it away. Is that all you can have? A Professor Black turning up to try and take it away from us? Trying to smear it, telling we're stretching things? Jesus, the amount of stretching the academia has done, he should go and check his own house. Solve your own internal problems, mate. Deal with the endless amount of Ian McGilchrist and Sheldrakes and Charles T. Tarts who've defected. And they can name more absolutely top of the level academics who've already defected. Richard Tarnas. Defectors you worry about them. If the insiders left you, right, what are you blaming us for sweeping up the leaves? Right? You've had the most eminent men within your own organizations Absolutely top of the totem pole, already defecting. Anthony Sutton from the Hoover Institute, right? They've already defected. Some of those names you already read out. So we have won the day. We have the silverware on our shelves. Nothing can change that. So anybody listening to this who's studied, who's contributed, who's put together little blogs and websites, pat yourselves on the back, fellas. Pat yourselves on the back and feel good that even amongst all of this turmoil, you can be like Nostradamus, strip off, wash in front of the well, let them all just go in their little, the dance macabre, right? Their contagion. You're not part of it. You're not part of it. Look at this.
Yeah, this is just a
dancing plagues, folks.
Yeah,
look it
exactly.
up. Yeah.
There's a whole historical account of this. I even did in, which one was it? Episode 4 of my cult series. I traced the whole communism experiment and the mass implosion of the society back to different places and towns in the Middle Ages, for Christ's sake. Like, they tried this so many different ways from Sunday. It's age old. That's and right. The same experiment keeps getting run again. And then when you study that for so long, as you have and I have and so many others have, and then you look at the headlines and you see what's being brought out, it's so freaking obvious what is happening. It is so obvious what is happening. It's obvious why they locked you in your house for 3 to 4 months. It's obvious why they try to scare the shit out of you and tap into your reptile brain complex and to freak you out and make you untrustworthy and separate you from your communities. It's obvious that they're trying to inflame a race war to try to steal some political power. This has nothing to do with any of the stuff they're telling you it does. It's so obvious. And this is something that is way bigger than I think a lot of people understand. That's why I was glad to do this show with Sean, because he came on and was like, yeah, all that stuff you guys are talking about in Hollywood and America and these documentaries that are exposing Satanism and pedophilia and all that. He's like, that's all going on for eons of time here in the British establishment as well. So, it's coming out from literally right. all over the world. And does anybody find it a little bit convenient or coincidental that right as all that information is coming to the surface I'm not just talking about us conspiracy people to see it, but millions of people, 60 million people, try that, okay, can see it now, that's the time when they're saying, yeah, guys, you know what, the virus is going to keep coming back, and you guys all hate each other, you're all against each other, black on white, and all this stuff, and the media is coming out every day with all this. And come on, it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. Like Gary Allen said, he's like, when you get to like 36,752 coincidences, you start to go, the math doesn't even add up,
Now, their narrative needs to be studied, and then you see how thin it is. If you're going down to the corner shop and you think you're committing a crime by doing that, then you already have the equation in your hands. You also have an ability now to see how embedded you are within the collective that these weird conspiracy people and Randians keep talking about. Hey, your everyday experience now is to judge on an emotional level how when they feel that way, I feel that way. See your according, see your inability to detach. You're not sovereign yet, right? There's still, for a lot of people, a place to go. But then all I'm saying right now, we're not getting into all the psychology. What I'm saying now is just on a purely technical level, right? With the accumulation or the preponderance of facts, you can walk into court. You can send a Professor Black a little link called Anti-Masonic Society or Community and get his comment on that. That the top presidents in America were into conspiracy. Crickets. Phone hasn't been picked up. You see?
Yeah.
Right, but the thing is, you've won then, right? And I want people to celebrate that right now. Yes. I want them to be Nostradamus standing at the well in the middle of the fucking plague, right? You celebrate the fact that we have provided you with a toolkit. You will win, whether you're talking to family members, extended family members, people out in the general public. So don't feel that you haven't got the silver bullet. Just even up to that. There's actually a lot more to celebrate, by the way, but this is one. This is one, and that's a very important milestone to get under the belt, because you've galvanized the information that you've been provided, right? You've mulled over it, you've assembled it, kept it, made a video or a blog or made it publicly available, understood it yourself, and then you move on and you say, hey, what a better time, that the naysayers cannot win. I've been calling for this a long time, but I said, once you win against these people, now is the point to say, congratulate yourself. That's a major step that you've got to. So feel good about it, even in the middle of mayhem. And then, the journey goes on, because obviously it is a continual process. But some important realization is that you need to be rational. These are the village idiot level, right? And the journey that they've taken you on, or want to take you on, you may have even gone on it for a certain while, but now you know that you can disembark. So many liberals right now are in the process of rethinking what they've did. When you're being shot in the head in your own car by some looters, when you are being kept on freeways for dozens of hours, right, with people who are going to knife you and murder you, and even that you've supported all your life and voted in the things that they want. Well, so what about all of their narratives? Half the people that are now suffering in the neighborhoods have voted that in. But are they going to not slit your throat when you say, but I'm on your side? They're already trying that, and it isn't working. And it won't work. Remember that woman screaming outside, don't allow them to elect Trump again. They're not even hearing people on their own side, right? It's like a shark, right? A shark fest. The sharks are just biting each other and eating each other. It's a frenzy. And you know something? Let's put it this way. All the things that you see are sociological manifestations. The dancing plague is something that is a phenomenon that has to happen. So don't be slitting your throats over this, right? Or your wrists over this. These are sociological phenomena. They occur like wars, right? Like blisters on your body, right? Think about it, right? Society manifests. I come from Northern Ireland, right? I mean, come on, right? Anyone who's from a war zone.
Share your experience, Michael. You grew up during the Troubles. You saw like chaos in the streets. That what's happening in America right now, it pales in comparison to.
The one thing that there was, back in the 1970s, there was an IRA leader called Frank Stagg. He went on hunger strike. The fucking city was on lockdown of unimaginable proportions. There was curfew all day and all night. Nobody moved because they thought he was going to die. And if he died, he had sworn that the IRA would literally massacre the whole of Belfast and any Protestant they could get their hands on. That was just one passing anecdote of the way we lived. Nobody could pull up at a chippy at 11 o'clock and not knowing that you come out alive. A pizza parlor, a bar, without having your limbs blown to smithereens, and bombs that would level the whole street, leaving even survivors lifelong with the jitters. This was a daily reality. You think you get into your car and the car in front of you or the car behind you blow up, leaving you maimed, leaving you dead, right? Your children couldn't go to school. IRA held up actual schools. On and on and on I could go. Graveyards just filled with the dead of the police headstones. They have a particular black headstone with the logo of the police on it, right? You're going to tell me that all of those men were an offense? No, the vast majority of them were young men, innocent army men, innocent police. But the graveyards, to this day, you can go and see it in Northern Ireland, right? And on I could go. But that type of terrorism, which ran for nearly 25 years, they held a place to ransom, right? And it was only because we had law and order that other buildings weren't destroyed and other atrocities didn't happen. But women and men and children were slaughtered in this nightmare. Wow. Young kids as young as 8 and 9 years old, guys I went to school with, were scouts for the IRA, lookouts. Not the schools I went to, but in my community was both Protestant and Catholic. And we had them on the Protestant side as well, the paramilitaries, right? And kids as young as 7, 8, and 9 were telling the gunmen where to go to kill, to shoot. And we're there at the time that was happening.
Incredible.
They'd be lookouts. Go into that bar there and wait for the fella to go to the toilet, then you give us the nod. That's what happened. They shoot people in the bathroom, shoot them in the bars and the toilets. And it was usually a little young lad who had set it up. I grew up amongst these people, so there's not an element of this kind of shit. And also I grew up amongst them, so that if you say the wrong thing, you're dead, your family's destroyed, right? Had to, walk on eggshells around killers like that. There was people that I knew in school that I told you, you'd bump into them in the street or going to the sweet shop or hanging around the park, they'd come over to you. And these were the kind of people that if they walked away, you were wondering why you were alive. These were people, if you walked a couple of, from the sweet shop back home and they left you at the corner, I'll see you later, you were wondering, what's wrong with them today? Why is my jaw not broken? And, why is there not a knife hanging out of my, sticking out of my neck? And I'm not dead.
That's incredible.
That's just them as, that's just them on a good day. You know what I mean? So, yeah, talk about a completely deranged situation that kids have to grow up in. So back to that point, it's just a social phenomena. Handle it. They come and they go. But the main thing for the enlightened person is what's called an enlightened witness. There is such a being, right? And he's stoical to that point, but he's an observer. He's not altogether stoical, because observation is an action. So if you're just thinking, I need to, part of me feels like getting up and doing something, going and waking up my neighbors and all the rest of it, right? You still have a lesson to learn then. Observation, marshalling of the facts, is action, because out of that may come a film, a book, right, and so on. So just observe. Don't get sucked into the flow of the masses in the social plague, right? In the dance macabre. Don't feel that you have to join it in order to feel one part of your brain is saying you're not part of history, or you're not part of what's going on, or you need to make a move too on either side. The day will, if that happens to happen, the day will come. But observation and study is action. So don't be feeling stressful because you feel that you're on the outside of a certain thing. If you've noticed that the press in your particular country or other factions in your country have gone insane, note it. Right? Note it, and again, you use your abilities to connect with people who share your views to that extent, and you can work it out, because you're here to study, you're here to learn, and you're here to graduate. It's not much different than being in a regular school, only it's the school of reality.
Or the school of hard knocks, like I like to call it, because I think we've been so softened to the point where we feel like progress always feels good, and moving things and improving things is always easy. And like there's this, like you said, the magical child thinking. If I call for it, it's going to come. A spoon's going to come and put it into my mouth. And I hear it so many times from people. And I used to be like that too. I had to grow up and mature, and I still have a lot of growing and maturing to do yet. But that's what the beautiful thing is about this kind of discussion and talking about these subjects. And it was actually the conspiracy research that woke me up to the spiritual research. They worked together. It was like I had to see the shadows. I had to see the darkness and the evil in order to be inspired to realize, well, I have to become the white blood cell to combat that. I have to work on my psychic immunity, like you always have talked about, Michael. And then when you look around at the world, and we're given this rose-colored glasses, Hollywood, Madison Avenue sort of veneer about things. I mean, this is the way the world is, and everybody's in that little bubble. But then the minute it's on your doorstep, people are burning down your churches, people are burning down your community halls. People, your government's telling you that you have to give up all your firearms, and then they're going to disband the police and unleash the anarchists. You start to go, oh, I guess I actually do have to upgrade my psychological and spiritual immune system. And so would you say then, Michael, that all this happening right now, this mass hysteria, the media, all the stuff coming out, that this is actually something people should see as a positive thing in the end? I mean, as crazy as that might sound at first to people, it's a positive thing, because this is giving all of us the opportunity to really start to pay attention to the meaning of life, to why we're here, connecting with our neighbors more, connecting with our family, connecting with ourselves, doing that inner shadow work, taking on that Zen sort of stoical mindset of calm in the storm. We need to be pushed up against the wall in order to grow, right?
Yeah, and notice that collective action has no bearing behind it. Most of the people doing all the activity today have not a single modicum of political power. Right? In fact, on a psychological level, they have no power. Right? It's a different kind of activity. But everything that happens within the confines of a city, and of course that can be extended or narrowed, but just let's use the city as an example, is a satanic ritual. Said it from day one.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody fucking paid any attention, but now you can get to understand it, right? And there's many rituals that have gone on, right down even at the bottom of civilization. And like we spoke just a few days ago, the main ritual or rite, if you want to use that weird terminology, but it's quite accurate, is the erasure of your independence as an individual. So the very moment that you're born, without like we said, remember we said, it's not your fault that you're a millennial. It's not your fault you're an urbanite. But nevertheless, when you were born, you entered into that ritual. And it is your parents' fault for not showing you how that dynamic works, right? And so the political affiliations, your psychology, your gender, right? All of this is part of the game, of the great master game. Like a board game. Like the Masons use that checkerboard for a reason. And so then things become very sharp focus, right? the conspiracy person is, remember we said that the conspiracy theorist, if you really want to know what he is, and you should use the right term, is he's a deep critic of his society. And I want that, right? In the process, there's lots of ups and downs and misgivings and deficits. But ultimately speaking, he is a deep critic, and that's what these Professor Blacks don't like. But when you even go further out from that point, the whole of the city, even its design and its intention and its rulers, right, and its hierarchies, is part of a great ritual that most of the people, 9 out of 10 of the people involved in ritual don't know it's a ritual. So how can you awaken the village idiot when he doesn't know he's an idiot? How can you wake the oblivious when they don't even know what the word means? How can you wake up a Democrat to the greater picture of his own belief systems if he doesn't think there's anything wrong with it, and it's got complete cognitive dissonance to the opposition, right? So this is civilization in which we have many, many issues, problems. But under all of those problems is the first and foremost part of the right, by which none of the other levels could come online if you didn't have this original one. And that is to erase a person's individuality and not let them know that it's even happened. That they're operating in society as a subject, as a glove puppet, as a fucking voodoo mannequin, right? And they don't even know how many pins are up their arse. And they're, you say jump and they jump. And you can put out any kind of monster, Punch and Judy show, and we go for it, like Rabbit, because we're Boogaloo. We're the zombie under the Datura. We're under the hex. So obviously then you see things come into sharp focus. Either when I realize that, somebody told me that the whole of the city life and every part of my existence is part of a much larger satanic ritual, right? Archonic, whatever way you want to frame that. I either go completely mad, and my next port of call is a madhouse or death. I commit suicide because I can't handle it. Or you say, I now have to become even more aware and critical. The super awareness, which is actually this word paranoia, which these Professor Blacks never tell you. The paranoiac is actually that person. Paranoia, greater knowledge. Now I have to really find a vantage point from which I can surveil, and I can see, like Sherlock Holmes, forensically, right? I get to a position in which I can see the whole drama. I go into those dark corridors. I go down these holes to look up, things, and I try to find my way out. Right. So that's why it's sharp focus. There's only fallout and wisdom. So to answer your question, that's it. Yes, in the end, after the sage and the enlightened witness, right, and the stoical person has found his way in the dark, right? He's fumbling about, but he has a general vague outline of what's going on, that there's something ritualistic taking place. Then when you look at these Pelosi's and even these, Fidel Castro's and Che Guevara's and these Trumans and this obscenity you've got up in Canada, bowing and scraping and kissing butt, right? You see that these people are part of the ritual. Some are orchestrated, they have a role in as architects, but a very great many of them do not. They themselves are on a leash, right? Their masters are sort of hidden from them, right? And they've bought this narrative. So you have to then play it like a kind of a game, and you have to do what we've been doing all along, right? And then you have to deal with the resistance of people who are acculturated to the ritual, who don't want you, they go, your chains are made of gold. What's your problem? That fella's got chains of iron, right? You're privileged. Don't you tell me you've bought a lie, right? And you want out? Out to where? Well, you're a liar, so I wouldn't take your direction, right? You have no say in my journey, right? So there is an awakening, because even on a sociological level, that subject, so it's like this, right? Even though it's a social mannequin that is operating, is not an individual. Yeah, but some of the same ontological rules that govern the life of an individual even continue to rule the life of that mannequin, if that makes any sense, right? You're far away from individualism. You're not the emperor. You're not the king of the world, right? You're just the guy working down in the engine room. But existentially, you're still close enough. You're not a million miles away from that being that you should be. And as far as natural order goes, the same laws apply to you even if you're walking around with a fucking single cell in your brain, which most people are. But even that still links you to the natural order, and so the same natural ordinances of the natural order apply. And that is an underlying good thing, because that means that even that pathetic freshman, in terms of real life, is still growing, still developing, still matriculating, even if every bone and every fiber in his body is against it. So what this does is several things. It allows you to back off a bit and not have to get in there with all guns blazing to fix them, because something's already working underneath. Now, that thing has its own dynamic, believe me, and it may end up destroying that being. Well, that's none of your business. You can't stop that. In fact, trying to stop it is a very great crime, a very great sin, right? But nevertheless, just keep it simple. Life is progressive. Life is evolutionary, right? In the widest possible spiritual sense, the omega point or whatever way you want to put it. And so the whole human race still has to learn. Don't do that, right? And don't bang your spoon if you want more food, right? Don't try to come out of the cot. Everything will be at its normal time, right? And those patterns, the rough, the creature that is produced by the society is what do they call them in the masonry? The muggers. That's about it. That'll do, right? They're out in the marketplace bashing each other over the head. They get used to the gruel, and they get used to the chains, right? So that person is actually going through a learning curve. It's actually well known what I'm talking about. It is a well-known fact that people who start off as liberals in their teens and 20s often completely abandon it in their 30s and 40s, right? So we have anecdotes that show you that they really do curse the way that they looked at life back then, and they realized they were wrong and all the rest of it. And you find a huge demographic of people who've made that change, by the way. So all of that things I'm saying is substantiated. But to answer your question, yes, in the broadest context, you have your constitutional moral inferiors. But even those people are still part of the movement of the Geist or the Logos or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, just because they have to be carried along as opposed to moving with their will. Yeah, of course we know that to be true. But they have teachers around them, and there is a universe around them, right? And there's even something inside of them, that still has that quest for meaning, no matter how subdued, no matter how, silenced it has become. And all the noise which is a good example, has taken place now, all that is noise. The ritual is to make so much noise that people lose their wits. Why? Why would there be that noise if I'm wrong? Isn't that noise and that cacophony to prevent somebody thinking? Isn't it to fragment? Isn't it to create multiple personality disorder? Isn't it meant to make the orgasm, the collective orgasm that people have at a sports event or now thugs in the street? Don't you realize what's going on, right? The disciples of unpleasure just get together as one big mob and have, what they imagine as pleasure, right? So even all of that noise of society in the necrophilia sense, that exists pertaining to what I'm talking about, that there is a natural instinct of growth, truth, meaning, right, justice, whatever you want to call it. And you have to make a lot of noise in your personal life and a lot of noise in your social life in order to keep the voice of that spirit out. That's it. That's what I mean by sharp focus. That's what it's all about. And if you follow that voice, you'll be led to the right music, you'll be led to the right films, you'll be led to the right books and the right teachers. When the chela is ready, they say in the East, when the disciple is ready, the master appears. Nothing on this earth is going to change that law. Don't become a slave to that. Don't give over one set of chains to embody another. When you prostrate yourself in front of the guru, that's not what I'm talking about. Right? I'm talking about truth, not its hybrids, right? And truth doesn't need you to be on your knees for anything, because it already knows that your whole being is repulsed by the truth. So the real journey is inward. It's dealing with your own armoring. It's dealing with your own resistance to truth, not anybody else's resistance. That's why people don't want to take that journey on, because I'd rather have faith in the other guy's faith. That's what religion is. You have faith in my faith, pal. And you go, okay. Because that exonerates me from then having to do any homework of the like what we're describing right now. That's So-Sein, not Dasein. Right? Dasein is when you say, no, I'm going to find it for myself. I'm going to look at all those demons within, or whatever the darkness is. I'm going to do my shadow work, because I don't want to believe in somebody else's faith. I want direct, living, productive, creative. And don't you see that all these monkeys running around right now, they're not even up to the level of the merest capitalistic, dictum, which is, if you don't like something, fix it in a positive, healthy way, bring a better system to replace it. They don't have that. They just have the pretense of having that. And if you also want something personally for your life, you do this thing called work. It's already given unto you. You're given a brain, you're given arms and legs, and intelligence. and all the rest of it. They don't even want to do that. So why are these people then trying, to rule our society where great people, good people, well-meaning people, should fall under their mob rule? Well, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Even if it sort of half succeeded for, they get to one rung of the cliff, the next thing they're going to be smashing their heads on the rocks below, because thousands of years of established systems aren't just going to be overthrown by night by this level of thuggery. It's just not, it's just not possible.
Oh, exactly. And it's incredible that you brought up the analogy of a ritual, because this actually was something I've been thinking about for so long as all this stuff was unfolding. I was even reading Dr. Mendelssohn's book on how he was coming out as a doctor from the medical system saying, oh, it's all ritual. It's a mass ritual. It's a cult. It's a medical cult. It's not medicine. It's not science. It's become a cult. And then I read a quote in my previous interview with Sean about how we've got insiders coming from within the CIA saying, yeah, there's this cult that rose up within the CIA. And on we go. Well, I'm just going to read a couple things here. And then, Mike, I'd like your comments. You started off years ago, I think it was Origins of Evil, the presentation you did, where you brought up this quote from Sidney Webb, who was the founder of the Fabian Society. And this just reflects back on this idea of the chess game. And he said, to play those millions of minds, to watch them slowly respond to an unseen stimulus, to guide their aspirations without their knowledge. All of this, whether in high capacities or in humble, is a big and endless game of chess, of ever extraordinary excitement. And that always stuck with me, that quote. I was always like, wow, this is a game. And then you read Zbigniew Brzezinski's The Grand Chessboard, and you watch that, you get into all this stuff, and you look at the rituals, and you see how it's all played. And there's pawns in the game, and there's kings in the game, and there's rooks, and there's knights, and there's this whole thing, right? Well, check this out. If we think of ritual, and you're talking about these people that want to make you bend the knee and all this kind of stuff, well, here's our ridiculous monstrosity of a leader, muzzled and kneeling in front of the cameras, of course. Well, the day before this whole thing broke, he was basically saying everybody's got to stay locked in. All the playgrounds got to stay closed. Kids can throw a ball, but they can't catch a ball because of the virus. We can't have the businesses opening up. Like my personal martial art dojo was destroyed. Friends of mine have had their dojos destroyed, and now they're just walking away permanently, right? So just think about the impact. And yet this is okay, getting thousands of people together to scream bloody murder, and it's all paid for by people like George Soros and the Clinton Foundation and others, okay? So just think about it as a ritual thing. You're muzzled and you're kneeling. What comes to mind? Masks, muzzles, kneeling. I'm thinking of Ismail and a few others here, okay? And just hold your thought there, Michael. Next one here. Check what was going on right before this whole lockdown. We had the Extinction Rebellion. The world is going to melt in 12 years. And what did they roll out? These Roman Babylonian priests running around telling you to unite with red gowns and this whole thing. A mass ritual. A mass ritual. So after seeing that, reflecting back on that Sidney Webb quote, what are your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, and H.G. Wells has said some similar things. Well, the first thing to say is that we always have been told. This is almost like 101 entry level to the conspiracy movement, the deep critical movement, right? And that is that we've been saying it from day one that they always tell us. Now, they don't just tell us like that. That's actually something he even wrote down, and you're quite right. There's Zbigniew Brzezinski's and others have written it down. But I've even gone from the beginning of my work to show you that they write it down in stone. They write it down corporately in corporate logos. And this leads us to the heart of why it's ritualistic. Why would you hide subliminal messages that have nothing to do with the product in the advertisements for those products? Remember I said in subversive symbolism, yes, I'm interested in the conspiracy and I'm interested in subliminals. But the one thing that linked the two for me, I'm one of the first people to actually find the link, is that all the people who knew and wrote for years about subliminals never mentioned any of the occult connotations of it. Talk about an oversight, skulls, black crows, filthy, degenerate stuff, some of it out of masonry, but some of it very necrophilous. But the only place you find that same symbolism is in occult societies, right? And I'd studied both back in the 80s. So that's where those two things came along. It's one of the main threads that got me started. Why are you showing endless occult stuff, but you never mention occult societies or occultism in general? So that I set out to then, do it through the 80s verbally with people that I knew. And then, as time went by, took it to a different level. So it is ritualistic because the subliminals, I repeat, don't pertain to the product. And all the other reasons and accounts that other people give as to why they're in, whiskey or vodka or any of the advertisements are absolutely fatuous. I discovered, and again, I am not telling anyone to believe this. I'm telling them to pick up the magazines and the magnifying glasses and go out with educated eyes and see if I'm wrong. My conclusion was it's part of a mass ritual, and that the capsule of the media was, secondary. And I have found nothing to dissuade me from that, right? Because the subliminal seduction is part of the witchery. Remember I said when the witch doctor, Rand's witch doctor is at work, this is part of the juju that they're also involved in. It's not just your priests, your pastors, your religions. It works on anything that controls your unconscious mind, or let's make it even clearer, your emotional body is the witch doctor. That which corrals you politically, and say economically, and divides you in that way, or oppresses you physically like it did in the Eastern blocs, the Cold War, is Attila the Hun tactic. So you've got the monarchy on one side, the autocracy, and you've got the theocracy. We've gone into this for decades now, and you're seeing it again. The Pope has just chimed in this week, right? I guess the witch doctor woke up. He's back, and the very fact that you have an edifice like that after thousands of years ruling you just vindicates everything I said a few minutes ago about where we're at. And how the village idiots need Big Papa to fucking tell them what to do. You want Frank Nitti and you want mafia gangland leaders? You got one. It's called the Pope. No mafia on earth could do as many crimes as that institution. And you people still don't know what's up? You're poking around and looking at other, nonsense? One of the biggest crime families and crime institutions in the world, the royal family. You just did something on it today.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You have got plenty of conspiracy. Right, and even that, what is a keyhole look, and you're lucky to get that. So I couldn't sit down with any of these people because I'd be laughing too loud at the naysayer. I'd be absolutely in hysterics at who these people are. That they're criticizing us, and all we've ever produced for them, and in total, is a tiny, tiny, tiny keyhole. What about your Setianism? What about your Luciferian, the real thing, not the fake thing, right? It's incredible to get into it, what's actually been going on this planet. And they want to come in and critique, it's alphabet soup level, mate. You're not even ready. You're gatekeepers. You're preventing and staunching something that hasn't even really got off the ground. What about the female element? That's fucking popular, isn't it? That got real traction, right? We're dealing with, they can barely get their minds round that Masonic conspiracy exists, or that the Jesuits or Opus Dei, why would I want to sit down with people who are crawling along the ground, like blind mice? I'm not of their level. It's like Isaac Newton said about astrology when he get detracted. He goes, yes, sir, but I have studied the subject and you have obviously not. That's the answer. I have studied it. I've dedicated years, right? I've scraped around penniless to do so. I've taken all the obstacles that one could be taken to know these things. Do not get up on your fucking hind legs. And then we got to prove that. You can't just say it with words. You've got to prove that you have, like those names you mentioned, that list is all of eminent men. This is the thing. It's not just of other journalists, writers, would-be, conspiracy buffs. They're all of completely eminent people. And there's more behind them, even to cite. So the village idiot who wants to go, well, he's just a Republican, I can't take anything he says seriously. Well, that fella's just a Democrat. I'm not part of that narrative. Right? I go, okay, all right, Punch and Judy, Tweedledum, Tweedledee. We'll see you later then when you grow up. Right? You carry on with the great work. You carry on following the threads where they lead. And it leads to the most amazing things when you study it, We've done stuff on Ireland's satanic cults. What a study that is all on its own. Right? We've gone into so many highways and byways. All of that stuff was suppressed by the establishment. But there's no conspiracy, David. You guys are all nutters. Well, the last time I looked at the village idiot, he was about the freest person around and nobody ever censored him. Nobody came along with put duct tape over his mouth. He never served a day in the madhouse. So why, if we're meant to be all village idiots, why have we got armies of people against us trying to shut us down? Hey, Mark, right? Why YouTube? Why do we have to have presidents making executive orders to just have the normal Second Amendment free speech? And why is it only a certain kind of narrative that's always the most? See, they think now, Facebook shutting down this guy and that guy. Hey, you haven't been us. We are the target. That's why I want to do this podcast. It's the conspiracy person who puts up something, a little quibble about the Second World War or the founding of America, right? Or the killing of the Tsar's family, or, whatever. Even your, lesser stuff, like vaccinations and chemtrails and stuff. It is that kind of thing that gets censored first. Well, it was Wilhelm Reich and Nikola Tesla's work that got burned first. Is the point sinking in? I want to know what's in that stuff, as the world has responded. When Velikovsky's books were completely banned by all publishers and taken back and retracted, the people who are listening to this right now made it the world's bestseller. And there's many other examples of this that I could mention. The people themselves stood up and said, we don't care. And they made the maverick, right? They made the maverick, right? Who something spoke to them. And that's what we're talking about. And that's what these defenders and gatekeepers hate. They don't want you developing. They don't want you using your unilateral intelligence, to step out of the conformity. But now there's more books than ever. There's more websites than ever, right? There's more podcasts than ever that are helping men do that. People do that, men and women. And therefore, that is the big threat in the ritual. Right? Now, it doesn't mean we're all perfect. Doesn't mean there's not a lot of stumbling and error and deficit, but it's definitely needed, right? It's definitely needed the way things are going. And that's why these Facebooks and other people want to censor and shadow ban. And you can prove that effective. It's so easy to prove that they do that. Huh?
They're censoring us because we're being effective. We're winning, as you say. We're here to say, guys, have a toast, have a scotch, whatever. You're winning. We're winning. We're not losing. The media is trying to make it look like we're losing. We're kicking their freaking asses, man. Just sit back and enjoy the show. It's just getting started. Give it 3 months and see the kind of shit that's going to come out. I'm going to be a part of it. The Unslaved's going to be a part of it. You're going to be a part of it. Those that are watching. We're going to expose this every way from Sunday. You're talking about Velikovsky and all these people. My God, the amount of names that have been forgotten. Think about Ted Gunderson and so many others. But you got people like Dr. Judy Mikovits right now, who comes out from one of the top level labs and scientific communities when it comes to creating immune therapies and the whole thing. She used to work under Dr. Anthony Fauci, and she came out and said, this was years ago. She came out and said, guys, the whole AIDS thing is not what you think. It's loaded with bullshit. All the vaccines are loaded with cancer-triggering viruses, SV40 simian viruses and mice viruses and shit like that are getting cross-contaminated into the human cell. You want to know how viruses are jumping from animals to humans? Do you think it's because someone jumps out of someone's soup? It's jumping into your freaking cellular structure. So she comes out and says it, and then she's like, the whole thing with the pandemic, the mask, the whole thing, I don't agree with it. There's been nothing. She's called it a plague of corruption. She wrote a book called Plague of Corruption. R.F. Kennedy Jr. did the write-up for the book, and it came out, and guess what? She did a documentary called Plandemic to expose all this shit. It got censored every way from Sunday. It's still censored, but her book became #1 on Amazon from people like us who are curious and going, right. Oh, you're telling us not to listen to her? We're supposed to go listen to Anderson Cooper or whoever, Fauci or whoever these idiots are? The BC health minister who's getting their orders from the communist-infected China handshaking World Health Organization. I'm not going to listen to those people. I'm going to go listen to the people you're telling me not to listen to. So they're doing a great job falling on their own sword. We just got to sit back and watch.
Education has been exposed by John Taylor Gatto and many other people we could list. We mentioned those names. They're eminent. They're from within the system. So I always make a point to my audiences, don't fight this from outside the system. Bring up the names of the people who are within the system, like the person you're talking about, and many others besides. That's an important thing. And in general, the narrative is shaking. It's already busted quite a while ago, but we don't see the after effects for a while. And there's other narratives that are busting as well. That's why you get the people as an exit strategy, coming out into the streets and flailing around. It's exactly what happens when you shoot the bastard thing through the head, right? It thrashes around these monsters, these horrible hydras. So there's a silver lining right there. What you've got to do is build, like Buckminster Fuller said, build a better system, meaning improve, conservatism, improve certain things, bring Ayn Rand to the fore, build it up so that it's really nicely, strong, that when you do need to replace it on whatever level, even on the total top level, corporate level, let alone in a more domesticated level, you can do so. And you can do so with excellence, right? With perfect articulation, with perfect knowledge and insight, and with perfect confidence in what you're doing is right. That's our challenge, and so that's a good challenge. All challenge is good. It's that we don't have challenge in our affluenza-ridden world. That everything, as you said, has been too spoon-fed and too easy. And we're going to continue, as you said, work. These are just little memos that we're putting out to people, little appetizers, to help, secure their faith in themselves, that they don't allow the media viruses, you see, to overtake their minds and poison them emotionally, because there is a witch doctor at work. Part of the ritual is twofold: the witch doctor to work on your emotions, and the Attila the Hun to keep rattling the cages, through the news media, through threats, and all of that. Also to get your focus off who the real threat is. Right. And I just will continue to remind people about the great Red International that controls the social media, that puts out morale busting content, about the police and everything else. And hopefully once a few of those points are digested, it's not rocket science, it'll help stabilize you and wake you up from the, the worm tonguing and all that. And we must thank you so much again, David, for today. I know it was last minute when I contacted you, but I thought it was important, and it's been a good discussion. Thanks so much for that.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always great. And thanks to you for your work. You woke me up, Michael, and I owe you a debt of gratitude. And we're going to keep hammering it out on Unslaved. We just did a really good, deep philosophical chat on this recent episode, talking about Schopenhauer, really trying to go deep into the why people fall for these things, how things got corrupted from within. So go check that out, unslaved.com. Support us over there. Michael, I know you got a lot of premium content on deck you're waiting to release as well. That's going to be second to none as always. And again, just thanks to all of the people that listen. Thanks to those of you who support this show. I just did a little live on my Instagram last night because I had one of my Instagram followers, just to show you. This is a young millennial girl. I don't know where she lives, but she built a TikTok account for me. Just on her own, voluntarily, started clipping up pieces of my interviews and putting them up there. And now they're getting literally hundreds of thousands of views. More views on this thing than I ever got on YouTube. People are making clips out of your work, Michael, and people are trying to figure this out. So I think we're at the age of revealing, and there's more to come. So thanks to all of you for making this possible, all your donations, your support. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do this. We'd be shouting at the wall. Support independent media right now. We need it more than ever. Go support all the people that you follow, and make sure, even just if you can't financially support them with your energy. Share the content. Get this message out. We're winning, and we're going to win. So I'll just leave you once again with that little meme Michael shared. We've got this hook, line, and sinker. So thanks to all of you. We'll catch you again soon on Truth Warrior. Cheers.